Hey everybody, it's Tal Griffin here. Hey, disclaimer before we start. This is not affiliated with any sect, creed, combination, religion, or faith, but it does touch on portions of those things. And that no political stances or views are accepted. And if they are brought up in here, you will be asked to stop. If not, you will be asked to leave. And we do not touch on political topics. So, that being said, we do not acknowledge any orientation. You are a person. That's all we care about. So, with that being said, that is my disclaimer, and it's subject to change depending on how much coffee I've had. So, anyway, let's get this going. So, what we're going to talk about today, or what I'm going to, is that our darker side and avoidance. This came up this last week, and that we all have a darker nature, and that there are some that like to find the power in that. Now, on the other side of it, why do we still want to stay in that? Why do we still want to be angry at something? What is it that we are not willing to acknowledge that keeps us there? What is it that we are avoiding the truth of, the realization, the actuality, and what actually is keeping us there? I'm not saying that our darker side and our darker nature is bad, but one can only stay in there for so long before there is a cost to be paid. And sometimes we have to wonder, if we keep going down this, can I keep affording this price? And am I willing to still keep doing it? And can I afford to keep doing it? More than likely, at some point, that answer will change to no, because of the cost of losing things becomes too great, becomes too high. Now, you might still have your friends around, but are you going to still be able to afford the loss of your own discomfort? And we like to avoid things that reveal to us why we are still here, why we are still practicing this. Why is it that, and what is it that I am trying to gain? What is it I'm trying to make my point across? What am I still pissed off about? And we might get a ding on that one, but okay. But what am I still angry about? What's causing me to do this? What's my reason? What's my justification? What is it that I am avoiding just for the sake of still being angry? What's my motive? What's my rationale in this? Why am I rationalizing this and creating it to be logic? And really and truly, with anger, there is no real logic, in my opinion. Because why does one want to stay in a irrational state? And that's what anger is. It's irrational. It's not rational and logical to stay there, because emotions, though are needed, can also make us and have us make some very bad decisions that are very costly. So, with that being said, let's dive into this. Let's see where this rabbit hole goes. So, normally something happens that we are holding on to, that is a resentment, a disappointment. Maybe we lost a girlfriend to somebody, or a boyfriend to somebody that had something better to offer. Okay. Something, or we thought. And, but on the other side of that, what was it maybe we weren't doing? And we want to pawn that off on somebody and justify jumping ship. All right. And so we blame the other person. We blame everything else around us. We blame, we point fingers. And ultimately, who's responsible for this? Who's responsible for our own behavior? We are. No one else has a say in how we behave except for us. Unless you've gotten yourself into a crowd that dictates you act like this. But then, what does that go into? Fear. Fear of not being accepted. So, but we maintain this presence. Or maybe it's something we don't know any different. Or maybe we stay in this victimatic mentality of, oh, I've had all this happen. That you're still a victim. That's your motive. And so it justifies to in our own mind. And in the mind, I can still be angry over this because so and so left me.
That is not the practice of acceptance.
No, it's not. It's not. The acceptance of is accepting things for what they are and for the reasons that are valid, legitimate reasons. And that's a good point. Avoiding something is not accepting it. We create our own reality to maintain that anger. When everything around us is falling down and the house is burning down, but I'm still angry.
And we're avoiding something. We have an aversion to something. We're not accepting it. We are.
Yeah,
We're
exactly.
avoiding that discomfort of not having that thing, or like not addressing this that needs to be addressed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and a lot of people don't want to face that fact. They don't want to sit down and hear and take that look in the mirror. Now, but on the other side, here's the caveat. that sometimes those emotions can drive us, that darker part of us can drive us to improve. How? Because you want to resolve it. You want to find your justice, right? You want to get redemption, right? You want to settle the score. Well, what caused the score to start in the first place? Solve it. Look into it. Use that darker nature as your catalyst to solve the problem in a productive way. It takes practice to be able to do, but if done right, becomes and yields very good results, positive results. That's the paradox. It's contrary to what we think. And there's something that,
Is that any more involving in an aversion to something?
yeah,
What's being
because
avoided?
yeah, exactly. Because when we find what's bothering us, making us uncomfortable, that's that thorn, that's that festering sore. It could be anything. Substitute that thorn. Find it. Dig it out. Now, some people may not want to dig into that. And there are some things that are better left to get help with for just reasons, because what you might have to dig out might be too painful to handle on your own. But the ego, as fragile as it is, can also be our friend or our enemy. Because the ego likes to protect itself. And it's going to do what it needs to do that. But first, let's switch back over to anger. What is anger? In our most basic fundamental needs and our most basic nature, anger is, back when we were cavemen, that is what helped us drive that spear into that animal, because we needed to eat and we were scared of starving. And if we are, we get angry because we're uncomfortable. Now, in the most basic of terms, that's kind of what it comes down to. But on the other side of that, you got to eat, right? Provided that um, you got to eat, and so you become happier. Now, why is it that you're allowing yourself to starve? Is it because you're afraid of getting hurt? Well, justly so. Animals can be big. Animals can be very dangerous, especially if they're injured. Who wants to face off with a water buffalo? There's a reason they've been given the name of the Widowmaker. They don't care. So, say you're hunting that water buffalo and all you've got is a spear and a rock. So, what do you have to go to? You could trap it, sure. But what if you don't have that knowledge? Yes, you can find it, which would be the logical thing to do. But cutting all that out of technology at that time, what is it? Anger, rage, the necessity, the need. But why are you still going hungry? Why are you afraid of that water buffalo? Yeah, because that's a bad beast. And yeah, you're going to get hurt. There's a very high probability of that. But also being angry can help you overcome. Once you find out, and then is a good reason to become angry. A good reason to use that darker nature, to stop making excuses. Quit staying in that. Now, this might sound like a gentler approach. And yes, it sounds like that, but the work is hard. The work is very difficult. It takes us to places we get in touch with that we don't like getting in touch with. And so, along with that, we still stay angry because we don't want to touch it.
Makes us uncomfortable. We look for temporary fixes.
Yes. And Julie, you had found something in the Buddhist.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it that you found?
It talked about avoidance of potential suffering, creating suffering, that accepting in life that there is suffering may seem cathartic, but it helps to practice in our deep aversion to suffering. And then it talked about we always grasping for what makes us comfortable, peace, feelings of joy, happiness can lead to impermanence, temporary fixes for a deeper problem. The non-acceptance that suffering exists and is a part of life. It's looking for a short-term fix, and we become self-centered and less kind to others to avoid our own suffering.
Right. And so what now there's a definition in the book of impermanence, right?
There are a few words that were used to describe it.
Okay. Would you have those on hand with you?
Yes.
Okay. Could you please?
The first one was anika, which means nothing lasts and everything changes constantly. The
Okay.
second one is dukkha, which is all living things suffer caused by attachment. And then the last one was anatta, no self or ego.
Right. So the middle.
Which were the three universal truths of the Buddha.
Okay. So the attachment is mainly, I think, what we all struggle with, the attachment to it, the familiarity of it.
The attachment to comfort.
Right.
And from the story of the Buddha, it talked about him leaving this life of comfort and not being completely satisfied with it, and then giving up everything and not being satisfied with that, and then finding some sort of middle way between comfort and discomfort where
Right. Right. Because nobody likes to be uncomfortable because it doesn't feel good. And yeah, you can get used to being uncomfortable, which sure, but which is the lesser of two evils? Going through the discomfort of discovering, or the discomfort of that darker nature within ourselves? Sure, it's a practice for some. But is it practical? Is it logical? Is it reasonable? And the other part of it is that there is a way out of it, which is like I was saying, doing the work, becoming unattached.
it
Because
can
let's,
be uncomfortable, but it will lessen
yes,
the
yes,
the like the suffering that you get from that constant
mhm.
avoidance of the discomfort.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It doesn't change what's happened. It doesn't change your situation, which is what people want to not accept.
Another thing from the class was saying that suffering is being a state of mind.
Yes, good point. Good point. There are stories of prisoners, okay, that yes, they were in for the long haul. They had a long sentence. And some of them came to a better way of believing, whatever that may be, and realized that same thing. It's the state of mind. Your world inside of that suffering can change. You have the power and the control of changing your state of mind. It doesn't control what's outside of you, which anger and all that seeks to do. Control it. When in reality, there ain't anything we control outside of our own, it's outside of what's inside of us. We can have thoughts. That's normal. Avoiding those thoughts, you can never avoid your own thoughts. Acknowledge them. Don't try to reason with them because that's still avoiding things. You're bargaining. You're trying to bargain your way through it. You're begging. Does that help our ego? Beg? No. It steps on it. Then you get into pride. Our pride goes, no, I'm too good for this. Now, I could be off on some of that, but now, what was the first one of that again? What, Anika?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And what did it say?
Nothing lasts and everything changes consistently.
Life is constant. Now, I'm going to try for us to not jump off the main topic here, but
Well, change is uncomfortable.
well, yes. So we can resist that and be angry over that change. But then again, there are people that have more of a difficult time to that change, and whatever that may be. Okay. But in time, the adjustment does happen. The brain and the body start to unlearn, and then you start to exchange and replace. But we have to come to the point. Here's the bad news, the part that sucks. You have to quit avoiding it. You have to come and face it at some point. Can it be scary? Yes. Can it be daunting? Yes. But that's where using that anger as your motivator. Become angry at why you are still mad. Why are you still staying in this place? That's where the power lies, is the power to change your situation. Now, I'm not talking about taking heads here, okay? I'm not talking about causing everything else to adjust to you, to stay in that victimatic mindset of always not being liked, of always using that as, oh, nobody likes me. Well, why in the hell does nobody like you? What are you doing that's causing nobody to like you? That keeps getting you booted. That everybody avoids you and looks at you in a bad light. And why do you keep pointing the finger at everybody else for your own problems? What have you not accepted?
Avoidance.
Yeah. It's in psychological terms, it's called cognitive dissonance. Avoiding the reality and placing our own reality and our own truth in place of it to maintain that comfort of familiarity. But with this, though, we have to learn ourselves. We have to know ourselves. And that in itself is a long journey. But through all of this, you do learn yourself. You become more self aware. It's easier for some than others, but I'm not saying that it can't happen. How diligent do you want to be? How tenacious do you want to be? How dedicated to that do you want to be? But that's uncomfortable. It causes commitment. Who wants to be committed to this? Commitment in itself is uncomfortable. It holds us accountable. which that in itself can be very uncomfortable. Now, do I hold all the answers to all this? No. That I'm saying that this might be one or two ways of many. But, and there's also, I'm sure, another term for this in the psychological worlds. I think it's called radical acceptance. So there's different words for actually coming to a different place. So our darker nature and avoidance, our lower selves, our lower being, has its place, has its use. But knowing when to step away from it, when to be in a better place, in a more comfortable place, the right way, the correct way, the productive way. Now, this comes into something that there's a person I know that for a very long time was a practitioner in a belief system that dealt with that darker stuff. But instead of it being hate, he found a way to make it productive. Of that somebody he was teaching one time came to him, say, well, I didn't get the girl. Why didn't you get the girl? And there were probably their own excuses, like, well, quit making excuses. And then when you get the girl, come back to me. Come to find out, I'm sure there's some reason that the person wasn't getting the girl. Maybe it was what he was saying. Maybe it was what he wasn't doing. Maybe it was something he was doing. Had to find out why. Had to find out why he kept losing out. Had to face it. Realize it. Now, we want to point fingers. Okay. It's easy to point fingers. And what I mean by pointing fingers is blaming everything else. Blaming everything else for where you are. And sometimes we are in the position we are from something we didn't see. And that happens quite often. But you still have a choice to stay there or not. Now, whether you decide to stay there is up to you totally, completely. However, maybe that being there is reminding you how much your life sucks. How much my life sucks. I've been through so much. Oh my God, you would not believe it. No one has suffered as much as I have. Boo hoo. You wouldn't believe what I've been through. Well, you know what? I got bad news for you.
Why are
Somebody,
you still living it?
exactly. And
Live it.
yeah, and somebody has suffered more than you. So you are actually in a better place than that person was or is. So really, when it comes down to, you're creating your own reality. This persona, this face, this definition of yourself. It becomes your master. We have many masters, but this one has become your master. Which do you choose to be, the servant or the master? The victim or the survivor? Make your choice. You can't have both. Oh, but wow. That means I've got to give something up. Yes, you do. Sacrifice is inevitable, but not all sacrifice is a loss that is worth holding on to. True? Yeah. Many people remember your teenage years. I'm sure a lot of us. How uncomfortable that was. You got hair growing in funny places. You got your body's changing. And that's uncomfortable in itself. And we're trying to figure out who we are. You know, we're trying to like, nobody understands me. You know, I'm unique. I'm special. Well, yeah, we all are. We all are unique. It's because we're an individual. Even twins, identical twins, and I speak from experience because I'm a twin. We all have our own identities, our own personalities, our own character, our own thinking. And our own thought process. But embrace that. Embrace what makes you uncomfortable. It's going to cause a change. But we have to learn to be able to step back from it. That's where the attachment. Why are you still so attached to this thing? It's life draining. You know, we all have a loss, whether it be a death, whether it be a breakup, whether it be a divorce. And there is a time of mourning for all of it. There is a process through it all. And death and divorce, in some ways, are very close. But how long do you choose to stay in it? How long do you want to stay there? How long do you still want to say, I've lost this? Now, death, that's a whole different matter. People die and perish and cease physically on the world, within the world, on the world, and among it. And your spirit, your energy moves on, which is everybody's belief is different. Some people believe in reincarnation, but that's a whole different matter. Believe me, there's in reincarnation, depending on your belief and your practice, I would not want to be where some of those people may end up and what they may become. That's a whole nother topic. But Again, that's of our own choosing where we may end up. And let's say, okay, I'll give you an example of how, and a method which is proven to work. One of many, but it's proven. In a recovery program, you have these 12 steps, one of which is a fourth step. It tells you, it asks you, who are you mad at? What's the reason? What was the result? What is your part? Those first three, who you're mad at, what happened, what was the result? Say maybe you came in late and you've been asked to stop drinking and you came in drunk again and parked your car sideways in the yard. And you knocked over the prize winning rose bush. You're parked on it and your truck's leaking and your car's leaking oil and it destroys this prize winning rose bush. But yet you were asked to not come in drunk again. So what happens? Maybe you get your car keys taken away. Maybe you were kicked out. But you're mad at that person for doing it. So who does this come down to? Who's the one that drove the vehicle? Who's the one that chose to drink? And who chose to ignore and disrespect the request? Who's the one that chose to go out and spend the money? Who's the one that chose? Why are they still doing it? What are they mad at? Why are you still holding on to this? That's where the work lies. And meanwhile, you're still mad and angry and pissed off and hate this person because you no longer can drive that vehicle. They took it away from you or got taken away from you because you just got too many tickets. Whose responsibility was that? What are you not holding yourself to? That's where people have a hard time finding those facts. Now, if one is willing to dig in that, then it's success. But people like to avoid that step because there's nothing wrong with me. I'm good. Everybody else around me is the problem. Then why are you still doing what you're doing? You're still maintaining that victim mentality.
Aversion.
Yes, aversion. So, though all of this other stuff of being angry can yield good results. And yes, you can become its master. But you have to let go of things, the attachment. You have to be okay with being in a different place. Because after all, what you know got you there, right? As Bruce Lee once said, unlearn what you have learned. Because that's what got you there. Knowing what's familiar, knowing how to drink to the point of where you shouldn't be driving, you know that. But you also know that this is going to get you in trouble. So you know, but you're avoiding. And then once you acknowledge the real reasons, you don't have those reasons to stay there. You don't have those reasons to maintain that state of mind. But what about making them pay? Yeah, that divorce, the person that screwed you, the person that left, or booted you out. You got tired of having that fun time with them. They got tired of having that fun time with you. Two things. There's a lot of things there that can happen. A, maybe that person is just becoming dissatisfied. Well, why are they becoming dissatisfied? And you're doing everything that was asked. Everything was causing the problem. You agreed to it, which means you're doing change. You're making changes. But either they were lacking. Maybe you don't know which questions to ask. Maybe you failed to ask some questions. But also, what if the other person thinks they don't have to? And so they go ahead and kick you out or they leave. They're still in that darker spot. You're not. You've changed. You expected everybody else to bend and yield around you because you thought you were in control. To change to your ideals, your comfort. Because staying where you are is easy, it's comfortable, right? But going outside of that, oh, heavens no. Heavens no, that's too hard. But correct me if I'm wrong, aren't you being contradictory to your own request? Change? Why are you still attached to this one way of thinking? Why are you so attached to thinking you don't have to change? Oh, I've already done a lot of this work. Yeah, no, you haven't. You've only done enough to get you by. Life is constant. Change is constant. So we must learn to change. We must learn to be a part of it. What happens when you dam up water? Huh? What happens when the pool ceases to move? That pool of water? What happens when it ceases to move? Anybody ever seen that?
It has a tendency to cause bacteria growth.
Yeah. And you can't drink that water anymore. It's poisonous. becomes stagnant. And then it develops a stink. And then you'll know you really can't drink it. But all of this anger, all of this stuff, say you did drink that water and you didn't know it was bad. All right. You had no idea. You were so thirsty and you drank from it, and then all of a sudden you have to keep finding a restroom or go behind a bush, or even worse. Well, that bacteria is like that self-feeding dark side, dark nature. It's interbreeding. It's cultivating. It's festering. And it's easier to stay there. And you haven't chosen to change. This avoidance of our darker selves. Yeah. There's a phrase said, break the chains that bind me. Break those chains that have held me down, held me back. What do you think those are? You can choose to let that chain hold you at the ankle or around your wrist or around your neck. But what breaks it? Either you break or the chain breaks. Which is easier? Which takes less time and effort to move away from and through? Which is easier? Because we're talking about discomfort here, right? We're talking about avoidance, right?
Yeah.
So which would you rather avoid? Wouldn't it make sense to avoid the long, hard struggle of staying where you are? Or do the lesser, long-term, shorter version, what was that word?
For change?
Yeah, the impermanence, right? Is that what's that?
Anika?
Yeah.
I actually am looking at a paragraph from the lesson thingy. It says that to try to avoid change is futile, and that the acceptance of the nature of change itself can free us from our own fears. If we accept the true nature of change, we can learn not to attach to anything, but still find a way to love it as it is.
Embracing.
Yeah.